Hello and welcome to Haunted Montreal's spooky storytelling sessions. I'm your host, Holly Rhiannon, and today I'm going to tell you all about the ghostly hitchhiker of Christophe Columb Avenue. Here at Haunted Montreal, we bring you ghost stories in both French and English every Saturday. Before we get into today's story, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button so you get notified every time we have a new tale to share. And if you're already subscribed, a big thank you and welcome back. We're so happy to have you. Now, without further ado, let's get spooky. Today, we've got a bit of a classic-styled ghost story for you. An English teacher named John Vaccarella relayed a disturbing story to Haunted Montreal about a troubling experience he had many years ago while driving his car along Christophe Columb Avenue. Christophe Columb Avenue is an 8.5 kilometer north-south artery east of Montreal's downtown core. It begins at Rachel Street near La Fontaine Park in the south as an extension of Parc La Fontaine Street. Heading northwards, it crosses the boroughs of Le Plateau, Montreal, Rosemont, Le Petit Patrie, Villeray-Saint-Michel Park Extension, and Ahuntsic, Cartierville before ending at Gouin Boulevard. The street is lined with historic Victorian homes and was named after explorer Christopher Columbus in 1897. The incident we tell you about today occurred in 1986 before John Vaccarella took up his teaching profession. At the time, he was working for the Canada Life Insurance Company as an independent agent. With no boss, John had to take responsibility into his own hands, which often involved working in the office at night. One cold and rainy November evening, John was driving to his office because he needed to make some phone calls to his clients. As he sped northwards on Christophe Columb Avenue, he suddenly spotted a shivering girl who was hitchhiking by the roadside with her thumb out. When he noticed she wasn't wearing a jacket, he slowed down and pulled over to see if she needed a lift. The girl appeared relieved that he had stopped, and she immediately climbed into the car's front passenger seat. She was tall and beautiful and had long dark hair. He estimated that she was in her mid-20s. The girl was obviously very cold because she was trembling. John asked her where she was going out, but strangely she did not reply. He assumed that she was unable to speak and so offered her a pen and paper. She then wrote down a name and an address on Christophe Columb Avenue. Because she was still shivering, John offered her his leather jacket to warm up, and she graciously accepted it, putting it on as they drove northwards in silence. When they arrived at her destination near the corner of Jean Talon Avenue, the girl got out and entered her home. Glad to be of service, John continued driving northward on Christophe Columb Avenue. It was only when he arrived at his office that he realized that the hitchhiker had forgotten to return his jacket. He decided that he would just swing by the next day to pick it up. So, the following day, he returned to the residence on Christophe Columb where he had dropped her off, and he rang the doorbell. At first, it seemed like nobody was home. However, after about a minute, the door slowly creaked open, and an elderly woman, presumably in her 70s, peered out. She didn't appear to be happy, and asked, "Who are you?" John told her his name and explained that he had picked up a young woman the night before who was hitchhiking. He described her and how she had written down a name and the old woman's address on Christophe Columb to be dropped off at. He then handed her the paper. While doing this, he also told her that the girl had forgotten to return his leather jacket, hence the reason why he was back and at her door. The elderly woman looked shocked and said, "That's my daughter who you just described, but she died a year ago." John was confused by her response and replied, "That's impossible. I don't believe you." The woman said, "If you don't believe me, then let's drive to the cemetery." Still somewhat confused by this bizarre situation that he found himself in, John agreed to go with her. They drove in separate cars, with John following the older woman to Mount Royal, where the Catholic Notre-Dame-de-Neige cemetery is located. After passing through the ornate gates, they drove to a newer section of the graveyard where many of the tombstones were recently erected. They parked their cars and got out. The woman led John towards the tombstone of her daughter. When they arrived, John almost fell over from shock. Draped over the tombstone was his leather jacket. Feeling disturbed and discombobulated, John quickly yanked his jacket off the grave marker and bolted from the scene. Today, John Vaccarella teaches English as a second language to immigrants at the English Montreal School Board, a job he both enjoys and excels at. Occasionally, when discussing strange matters with his students or colleagues, he will recall his own personal encounter with the paranormal. Even though it happened over 30 years ago now, John does not question his memory. He still firmly recalls that bizarre November night in 1986 when he met face-to-face with the ghostly hitchhiker of Christophe Columb. Are you a Montreal resident, or perhaps a tourist who's had your own strange experience on Christophe Columb Avenue? If so, we'd love to hear about it. As always, we want to know your theory on what could be happening. Thank you so much for stopping by. If it's your first time, we hope you'll be back for more. We put out new videos in both French and English every Saturday. If you'd like to learn more about the organization founded by the talented Donovan King, it's all listed in the description down below, along with links to get tickets to in-person haunted storytelling tours. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. We'll have a new video out for you next Saturday, but until then, stay spooky.